Want to ask a couple questions real quick, and we don't have to have answers right away, but I do support the infrastructure task force. My former appointee, Chris Dixon, is out there, who's an outstanding orchestra teacher in this county. So he helped prepare me with a couple questions for this meeting tonight. One question is, this task force identified instructional space deficiencies between older and newer schools. Newer elementary schools have activity rooms, science labs, strings rooms, and story rooms. Older schools do not have some of or all of these instructional spaces. Current practice is to add activity rooms and science labs to older schools when they undergo addition or renewal projects. When will string rooms and story rooms begin to be added to schools undergoing major construction projects?
So I'll take the question. That is something that we still need more consideration over. So when I arrived, the current practice was in buildings, new buildings, they would take the stage in the multi-purpose room / cafetorium in an elementary school, for example, and they had these large folding doors. So many of these schools still have that. And again, I try to be very positive, but I will say that was the most bizarre thing I think I had seen, other than the windows. But again, the lack of windows. Economics played a huge role in that, and the strings program was much, much smaller. So as that has dramatically grown over the last 15 years, we changed the model to have a dedicated strings room. And we've tried to make improvements while we're, again, trying to get the science labs at every building and all of those things. So the focus just these last few years has been the most pressing need was at the middle school level. So that's where we directed our renovations to string spaces in several projects in our middle schools. And we have that on the list. So I know who you're talking about. So you can tell him that we will continue to explore the possibility of making sure that we have a dedicated space that is an appropriate space. Because again, quite frankly, as the schools have grown in population, if you're still on the stage with that partition pulled and there's PE going on, or it's lunchtime and you're trying to have strings, it's problematic, to say the least. So please tell him that is on the list.
He's out here. Underneath his mask, I think he's smiling or laughing. So
okay, good.
Well, I don't know.
That's really good. My other question has to do with that maintenance auditorium theater, or the maintenance line in the CIP, which I think is really a great idea. Because we have a lot of schools that are not necessarily extremely old, but they're not really new, and they have mechanical issues or like trouble with the sound system or something like that that we can look at upgrading that can improve the quality of our instructional experience for our students. And so I'm really glad to see that category. And I look forward to discussing more about what schools might be in those categories. My last question is, that's not really a question, that was just a comment, I guess.
Well, let me just
would you like to
respond
address?
as well by saying I told the team, Mr. Shiroki, I said, I want one of my last acts is to get in a funding stream for these kinds of upgrades with the arts, because again, we've been doing them rather piecemeal. And people might say, well, why is that? Well, because of funding. You've got to plan for these things. But even in some, like, I'll give you an example, Battlefield High School. So Battlefield High School is not that old, but it doesn't have the LED lighting. That can save a lot on energy costs as well. And depending upon how the bids were structured, you may or may not have state-of-the-art equipment in some of these buildings. And we now have an in-house person that was a part of the Colgan Center for the Fine and Performing Arts that also works across the school division to help assess what the needs are for theatrical equipment. I'm very proud that I was a part of personally stealing him from the Hilton Center, which has never forgiven me. So, you know, the beautiful Hilton Center for the Fine and Performing Arts out on 234. And so since we've hired him and he's been able to go out and assess some of these schools, we can actually make improvements and save money at the same time with something just like switching the electrical lighting to LED. The other thing is many of these things that have to do with riggings and the way the lights are posted and all of that, the weight of some of these things, some of the newer technology is much more lightweight. And in fact, sometimes the newer equipment is cheaper than the old equipment was. So there's a lot of innovation in the arts world in terms of those materials, and we've made a lot of advancements in the arts, and you know that's one of my areas. So I want to make sure that we have that funding stream and are able to assess the needs of that, just like we do so many other facilities.
Thank you, Dr.
Component.
Waltz. I think that is excellent. And I am also a huge supporter of the arts, and so I'm really looking forward to the effect of that in our division. And that's great information.